Good evening, guys. Welcome back to the channel. It's hard being a blue nose sometimes, isn't it? Bloody hell. 2-2, Sheffield Wednesday at home. Very late get out of jail card. Gonna now talk through some of the notes I made during the game. So the first thing I noted was I wanted to discuss the journalist Neil Moxley. Was not very happy at all with his bit of journalism today. He picked up on the fact that Tom Wagner has flown in from America in time for tonight's game, and he's decided to run with a narrative before kick-off about lunchtime today. He's decided to run with a narrative that was for crisis talks with Chris Davis. I just feel that's unsettling and that's unprofessional. And when you look at the wider picture, the whole reason Tom Wagner's over is because of Wrexham on Friday. He was at the Wrexham game last year with the fans, and he'll be doing the same Friday night. And also, you've got an NFL game in London at the weekend that I expect, Mr. Brady might be out, and he's having Wagner as his guest, and he's took a chance to come over for the week just to have a look at how things are progressing at the ground and the training ground and stuff like that. It's certainly not for the narrative that Neil brought up, but enough said about that. I also want to say that going into it, I feel very sorry for Sheffield Wednesday for the state of the ownership of the club. It was not in the too distant memory that we were in similar sort of predicaments. And obviously the news came out today that they'd been given 2 deadlines in the last week when they'd be paying the players, the coaching staff and the club staff. And the final one was this morning and they still hadn't been paid. And I thought despite that, their fans still travelled in numbers. Their players still gave 110%. And I thought it was a very spirited performance from them in the circumstances, so kudos to them for that, for the commitment shown to the fans and to the club and what that club means to that community. There for the grace of, do you know what I mean? As I said, we were in a terrible situation a couple of years ago. So yeah, moving on to pre-game. So obviously the team news came out. I thought it was a good starting 11. My only question was, my only 2 questions were, who does he pair with Clara? Is he going to go with Newman, the options were Newman or Cashin. Is he going to go with Clara and Newman, 2 right-footed centre defenders, or is he going to go along the basis of, when he's had Robinson with Clara, he looks more comfortable because Robinson's left-footed and obviously Cashin is left-footed, and he went with that option. More about that later on. I thought he needed to break up the Iwata and Pate partnership. I thought that had gone a bit stagnant. And I was glad to see Tommy Doyle starting over Pake and getting a chance to show what he's about. So that was good. And then I did wonder what his choice would be between, obviously he started Dykes at Coventry in favour of Thiago. And I didn't think that worked, so I thought he needed to start Thiago tonight, and he did. So that was encouraging. I thought we started the game well. Positive attacking start to the game. We were straight out the trap, straight at them. Got that early goal after 8 minutes. Great to see Stano take that goal really well. Especially because for those of you on social media such as X, you'll see that the last couple of games Stano has been getting a lot of stick. And people have been questioning him majorly and saying nobody will speak up about the fact he's been terrible because he's the golden boy. So I was really pleased he got that goal to kind of get them off his back a bit and just kind of say, what? I'm still here. I'm still the player that I was last year. Silence the critics sort of thing. So I was pleased for that. I thought Doyle was exceptional tonight, especially in that first half. Showed just what a player he is. The player that Pep Guardiola was vocal about saying he's a fantastic player when he had him at Man City. I thought he was brilliant, and we'll touch more upon him later. We then, We go in level at, at half time from another cash-in mistake. I don't think Cashin's up to the levels we need him to be up to, unfortunately. That's 2 mistakes in 2 games. Not laying it solely at his feet, because Allsop should have saved it, but ultimately it was Cashin's mistake that led to the ball going in as an attempt on goal that Allsop's not then dealt with. This isn't a channel where I'm going to criticise people. In an over-the-top way. It's all constructive. I'm behind any player that pulls on the blue shirt, and I'll be behind the Blues, win, lose or draw. But the way Cashin's performed the last 2 games, you have to question why you weren't picking Newman over him, other than just the fact that he's a left-footed centre-back. I'm presuming Robinson will be back in for Friday night for Wrexham, because I think you only do a 1-match ban for 2 yellows. So we'll either see Robinson back in there, or my preferred choice Friday night would possibly be Newman, and get Newman to look after Kiefer Moore, and then leave Clara free to work on the attacking build-up phase of play. That's how I would play that. Kyogo starting, he looked fast, he worked hard, he was constantly pressing, constantly in the right place, constantly alert, pacey, looked like a right handful. The only thing his game didn't have tonight was a goal, and there was a couple of times when he could have easily got a goal if he was a bit more clinical, and probably a bit more match sharp in reality. But I thought he had a fantastic game. Their equaliser came from a long ball again. Like Saturday against Coventry, we just don't look like we can cope with long balls over the defence. We just look dumbfounded whenever it happens, and teams are rightly then just absolutely going at us with the long balls over the top, because they know we can't deal with it. I also thought in the sort of majority of his game tonight, till he was took off, that and let's hope it's not an injury. It didn't look good when he went off, but I thought it looked like we didn't really know. Stano didn't really know where he was playing, where he was meant to be playing. It was sort of like, am I on the left? Am I the 10? Am I support striker feeding Kyogo? He just looked a little lost out there. And I love the lad to bits. I love his energy. I love his effort. Love his goals. But I just wonder whether he just wasn't sure the role he was meant to be playing, sort of thing. I think ultimately it comes down to my next point. The first half an hour or so, we looked on top, easily on top. And at that point, we needed to have got a second goal, and that would have killed it. Good night, Vienna. 2-0 half time. Job done. But we didn't. And there was times last year where we'd have like a 1-0 lead and we'd be on top of the game. And it's certainly been the case at times this year as well. We'd be on top of the game and we just don't go for the jugular. We just don't ease off the handbrake and just think, right, we're in the ascendancy here. Instead of controlling the game, when we've got the attacking momentum, let's go and stick 2 or 3 past the opponent and put the game to bed nice and early. But we're just not doing that, and I don't understand what that's about. When you're playing a Sheffield Wednesday side who are depleted and have only won once this season, when you're 1-0 up after 8 minutes and you're all over them, why aren't you going for the jugular and killing the game off before they even start to attempt to get back into it? I just don't get the logic of that. I don't understand it. After their equaliser, the heads seemed to drop majorly. We just looked totally dumbfounded. For me, and we couldn't get it for half time quick enough. The one other thing I noticed about Kyogo's game today was he's 5'2", something like that, and all he's getting in his direction is sort of aerial balls. He's not going to win aerial balls against centre halves who are taller than him. some knocking on 6 foot. You need to be feeding him 2 feet, and we're not doing that. He's not getting the service. It's not rocket science, do you know what I mean? A teeny guy ain't going to beat a centre-back for, for height. So you've got to have someone feeding him to feet to give him opportunities, or he's not going to do anything. He can only score what, the service he's fed. What was my next note? So yeah, half time we looked at it. We had 70% possession in the first half, and we did nothing with it. I've said it time and time again. It's all good and well having the possession and the stats look pretty on a spreadsheet and all that stuff, but what's the point if you're not doing anything with it? We have 70% possession. How are we going in 1-1 at half time after getting a goal in the 8th minute? How are we not going in 2-3-0 up? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't get it. I don't get the logic behind it. I think Allsop's distribution at the minute is majorly off the boil compared to what we saw last season. Yeah, and then the major confusing thing, we get to the subs on about the hour mark, and he takes off Doyle, who's arguably the man of the match to that point. He takes him off, and he also, takes off, was it Patrick Roberts he took off as well? They were both having a great game. Doyle was man of the match to that point, and he's took them off. I don't get some of his team selections, like Saturday, Douche pulls up injured, so who are you going with up top? And he puts Dykes over Kyogo. I don't get that. For me, you've got to know what Dykes is. Dykes ain't a starter. He is a brute attacker who you can chuck on for the last 15, 20 minutes and say, do you know what? Go at tired defenders, make something happen. He's not a starter. And I don't recall seeing him having a touch on Saturday. Obviously, you put that decision right tonight by starting Kyogo over Dykes, but the decisions in the subs tonight, they just made no... Well, that first sub anyway, Roberts off and Doyle off, made no sense. I mean, he made a sub later on where he took off a defender and he put a midfielder on, and he was kind of going for it. I get that, and we've seen him do that a couple of times, like at Stoke away. But Doyle and Roberts off, it's just bizarre. I don't get it. Also, at that point when those subs were made, the home fans on the 60-minute mark were booing. You don't like to see that. We shouldn't be booing our own team at home. And it shouldn't be at the point where we're booing substitution decisions. It looked like Stano went off injured. I hope that's not too bad and he's all right for Friday. He certainly didn't look too comfortable. Neither did Bright Samuel, so I hope that's not a bad one either. 73rd minute, Kogo goes through on goal. Has a chance, 1-on-1, probably has a bit too much time to think about it and lets the defender in for a great tackle. Kind of bottled it. That comes down to match sharpness and confidence. He's yet to get off the mark in the league for us, and I think that shows. I think he's the sort of player that looks like he's a handful and he's alert and he's very good and very fast. And I truly believe that once he gets 1 or 2 league goals, then he'll just fly from there. He'll just, he'll hit 10, 15 goals. But it's just getting that first one under his belt, isn't it? Second half was really frustrating to watch again. Our football at times is just so pedestrian, so slow. You're chasing a game or you're looking to go for the jugular and we're just passing home every single time and rebuilding from the back, and it's just so frustrating to watch. Their goal to go 2-1 up. Love him or hate him, Barry fucking Bannon. Barry Bannon. If there's one thing that guy can do better than most, it's pinpoint accuracy with a pass. And that's what that goal was. He swung a free kick straight onto the back post for a player waiting and popping it in. That's the difference in this division, and that's one thing we haven't got at the minute: set pieces. We need better set pieces. If that means bringing in a dedicated set piece coach, then so be it, because especially when you're away from home, Wednesday schooled us in that, basically. They were 1-1. Game could have gone either way, and for a long time it looked like they'd got out of there with a win because they nicked one on a set piece. They were clinical on a set piece and nicked one. And that's the difference in this division sometimes, how you defend or how you attack on set pieces. And at the minute, both of them, defending and attacking, are letting us down. And, you know, these are the fine margins that you're going to have to be on top of in the Championship if you want to be a high-end Championship team, and we're just not at the moment. We then, you know, going 2-1 down, you know, fans started arguing amongst themselves. The atmosphere started getting a bit edgy, which is, again, it's a shame to see. It really is. You don't like to see it. I get it. And I get the narrative that the keyboard warriors lead with on X and stuff, but it's not good to see. You know, we're meant to be a Blues family. Win, lose or draw behind the Blues, do you know what I mean? We're not deluded enough to think that we're glory hunters by being Birmingham fans. We know full well that that's never going to be the case. So you have to take defeats and you have to take disappointing draws as well as you take wins. But it's still not nice to see fans arguing amongst themselves in the stands. It's really not. And then we move on to, obviously, the last throws of the game. I think it was 8 minutes added on. We ended up playing about 110, 112 minutes. And it's good to see that Allsop was going up for a couple of corners, trying to make something happen. You could see the blue nose in him in trying to do that. And it was nearly the fairy tale off the first corner for him. But that made me think, you know, I'm not seeing too much character in the side at the moment. Like in these tough moments, like at Stoke and at Coventry and 2-1 down tonight, who's grabbing it by the scruff of the neck and standing up when it counts and rallying the troops and going, come on, for God's sake, we're better than this. I'm not seeing any of that at the moment, and that concerns me slightly. It just feels like something just ain't right at the moment. I don't know what it is. I can't pinpoint it. Maybe there's stuff going on behind the scenes at the training ground, but the only thing I can see that's wrong, without knowing the ins and outs of the club and what goes on at the training ground every day, is that a lot of these new players, they're not clicking with the current batch that were there from League One and each other. And it's like half the time the players don't know where they want to receive balls, what passes they want, like to feet or in the air. They just don't seem to be cohesive. They don't seem to know each other's games and be able to read each other's game and movement and passes. And it just something just doesn't look right at the moment. And it certainly doesn't feel right atmosphere-wise. Suffice to say, we're going to have to be a lot better than this on Friday. Otherwise, I really do fear the worst for Friday. And I think Damari Gray's late equaliser was literally just a get-out-of-jail-free card. I can't honestly put my hand on my heart, even as the most optimistic of Blue Noses, and say that we deserve that. We didn't. We simply didn't. We got out of jail free. We got very lucky there with that. Good to see Davis running up to Tilton to celebrate with the players. You know, some of the keyboard warriors, you know, question him and question his ability and his work, and it's good to see how much that means to the guy in that moment. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure when he looks back on it, you know, ultimately you shouldn't be celebrating getting a last-minute equaliser at home against Wednesday when you had the lead in the 8th minute. But, you know, in the moment, that passion, that fight, that's what it's about. Yeah, I also noted, why did it take us to the last sort of 10 or 15 minutes of the game to go onto the front foot and be chasing it with such urgency? Where was that urgency throughout the whole game? Where was that urgency in the first half to look to kill the game off to a 3-0 before half time? It's no good suddenly injecting that urgency in when you're a goal behind. You know, in the first half where you take an 8-minute lead against a poor team, you need that urgency and that speed then. We're just not quick enough in moving the ball around. It's too pedestrian. The other thing I want to debate tonight is Chris Davis. I'm not going to be negative. I'm not buying into the toxic narrative of the keyboard warriors or anything like that. But some of his decision making, starting lineups, subs, they're a bit confusing. I feel his game management at times is sometimes lacking, and I don't blame the guy for that. He's a great manager. He's a great bloke. We had a great world record-setting season with him last year. However, we have to remember this is his first ever managerial role, and especially his first time managing in the Championship, which is a very, very tough division. And I think so far this season, his lack of experience has shown, unfortunately. It has shown. He's been found out a lot tactically. He's not known how to deal with certain scenarios. And that's not his fault, you know. That's not his fault. You know, we shouldn't be too hard on him for that. But it makes me wonder whether he'd benefit from a technical director or an advisor. Somebody who can come in, who maybe doesn't want to work in day-to-day management anymore, or isn't in work as a day-to-day manager anymore, who can come in and act as a counsel to Chris Davis to advise him through these moments. I'm not necessarily saying an assistant manager, because he's got his guy, he's got Ben Peaty and he does good work. But maybe someone in an advisory role who can kind of advise him pre-match day on selection and tactics and scenarios in games, and then, you know, can maybe sit in the main stand behind the dugout, you know, upstairs, and he can have a Bluetooth speaker earpiece on with him, and he can just run decisions past him, and he can get a bit of mentoring, I guess, you know, of actual Championship experience. I'd be inclined to explore that avenue before exploring the avenue of hitting the panic button and letting Davis go. It's not his fault. It's his first job role. It's a tough division to be in as a first-time manager. He's got the ability, and, you know, he's got the coaching skills. He's just not got the managerial skills as yet. He's learning on the job, and I think with him learning on the job, a mentor would be very beneficial to him. I think maybe like a Tony Mowbray type figure. Tony feels like he's got unfinished business with us. Maybe he can come back in a kind of mentoring, advisory, technical director type role to help Chris along. I don't know. Just thinking out loud on that one. As for fans calling for Davis to go, I think that's harsh at this point. I think we made a mistake in being that rash with letting John Eustace go and bringing Rooney in, and we all know how that ended. I'd be inclined to give it until at least probably at least sort of tail end of November, Christmas, and then see where we're at. See if there's any improvements. I think, you know, the owners rightly, after tonight, Wagner didn't look happy with what he saw when they panned to him on the camera. I think rightly he'll be having a conversation and he'll be saying, look, you know, you're our guy, we love you to pieces, but something ain't right. What support do you need? You know, can you assure us that certain things will change and you'll turn this around and you know, go from there, set him a target, say maybe, okay, we'll give it till Christmas. We want to see improvements. We want to see things working a lot better. Otherwise, we're going to have to review the situation. I think it'd be too rash at this point to hit the panic button. I think, you know, you've got to give the guys some credit for last season, and you've kind of got to allow for players to kind of get used to each other's games and gel. And, you know, I don't think Chris Davis even knows his best 11 yet. He's very much learning that game by game, and I think you've got to give it an opportunity. You've got to give it a chance. You can't be rash. You know, United know that they made a mistake in that last time, and they've learned from it. Admittedly, yeah, they'll be having conversations, as I said, saying, you know, this ain't acceptable. This needs to improve. Do you need any support from us to help? But I don't think they'll be hitting the button just yet. I think that, you know, if we get to Christmas and we're looking like we're in the bottom end of the table, then I think that's when it'll happen. Yeah, that's my thoughts. Please comment with your thoughts on tonight's performance and everything I've discussed. Would really appreciate your comments as much as I'd appreciate you hitting the like button, hitting the notification button, especially the subscribe button. I need to build the channel up. Please help me, my fellow Blue Noses. And go tell a friend about the channel. And let's get this little community going. For now though, keep right on, Blue Noses. On to Friday night. There'll be a preview video coming out in the next few days for that. Joys and sorrows too, Blue Noses. Let's remember that. Joys and sorrows. Up the Blues.